Okay, welcome back, and thanks for staying for my own talk. I'm David Guralnick from Kaleidoscope Learning in New York, and I also teach at Columbia University. My own background is in the mix of education, technology, and cognitive science. So how do we think and learn? How do we use technology? How can we help use technology to help people learn better and perform their jobs better? And the focus of my talk today is about how we can reimagine what learning experiences are with AI and new technology. So AI has suddenly become a hot topic after years of ups and downs. I'll talk a little bit about some of the other aspects of AI, but I'll focus more than anything else on what kind of learning experiences we can build. And that's what we'll do for the next half hour or so. But first, I want to tell you a little bit of a story. This is actually my elementary school. This is where I went when I was 10 years old. It's a school outside of Washington, D.C. A fairly recent photo, still actually, doesn't look that different than it did when I was 10 years old. And it was a very open-minded school. We didn't learn in the traditional ways of memorizing and testing. We learned by doing projects and by doing. So one of the most memorable experiences I ever had was in the 5th grade when I was 10 years old. We had to learn about state governments. And in most schools in the US, you would learn about state governments by memorizing a bunch of facts. What's the governor like? What's the governor's job? What's the state bird and the state flower? All those kinds of things. What's the, how do the laws work? You would memorize facts, you'd pass a test. What we were asked to do was entirely different. It was pick a state that you're interested in and put together a scrapbook demonstrating key facts about the state and how the government works and other things. So the overall goal was very, very different. So we did research. Individual research, research with friends, all kinds of things. You go to the library. This is before you could just Google everything. You go to the library. You would write letters to the State Chamber of Commerce. And as you did this project, we would meet with our teacher periodically, individually and in groups. And she would guide you. She was an advisor, right? She didn't tell you what to do. She would listen to you as as somebody with agency and decision-making authority and interesting ideas. And all of your friends are working on this too. So I picked the state of Pennsylvania where I was born. I lived there for 1 year. Didn't know much about it. So it was already meaningful to me and interesting to do that. This is a project that, here we are years later, I remember so well. So the end product looked something like this. This was a scrapbook. This is not my real scrapbook. Actually, I'm not sure my real scrapbook looked that much better. I am convinced my real scrapbook is somewhere in my parents' house because no matter how old you get, things are at your parents' house. But I haven't found it. So this was what the goal was like. And the project was set up kind of as follows. There's 1 teacher and 15 students. We did have some budget, so we could make long-distance phone calls, which were expensive at the time, write letters, all that stuff. We were encouraged to talk with each other about the projects. This is a fascinating project. Here it is years later. This is a memorable learning experience. It was not a technology-based learning experience, but it was a memorable one. And how come? One of the reasons was it was learn by doing. We learned by actually doing something. We didn't just memorize information and spit it back. We had to do something. We had an actual project, something we really engaged in, got involved in, cared about. In the educational theory, there was constructivism. We had to build something. However my scrapbook may have looked, it was interesting, it was mine, it was personal, and I put a lot of effort into it. And it had a lot of interesting stuff because you'd find things out like, hey, my friend just found out that, if you call this particular state agency, you get some kind of information. Maybe my state has that too. And you would work together. We had one-on-one coaching and mentoring. The teacher's role was as a mentor. It wasn't just telling us what to do. It wasn't tell everybody, go memorize these things. It was, let's talk about what your particular situation is. So she worked with us individually. Lots of collaboration with other students. The entire school culture was one of collaboration. So we weren't, if I learned something new, like who to talk to in my state, I would tell my friends. If they learned, they would tell their friends. Right? We weren't trying to one-up people. So, make of that what you will in terms of American philosophies, but that was definitely a very collaborative environment. And the end result was we had an emotional connection to the project. Everybody remembers this project. People talked about it for years. People still care about it. I clearly still care about it. In contrast, when I got older, a couple years later, we moved and I had to switch schools. which was traumatic for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons was that the school environment I switched to was much more traditional. It looked like this kind of building. One of the first jobs we had to do in the 7th grade when I switched schools was memorize and recite the rules of capitalization and punctuation. There were 12, apparently, someone thought. I took pride in getting good grades. I memorized them. I did well on my test. None of that helped me capitalize or punctuate better. If I was good, I was already good because I could actually do it, not because I could recite the rules. I'm not a computer. I'm not going to go map to all the rules when I do it. So it was not the right way to do it, and it was a really uninteresting experience. So where are we in terms of education? Well, you know, way back, this is an ancient Babylon photo. Way back, early education was apprenticeships. You would learn by doing, you would apprentice to a master. So you might learn to be a blacksmith. You would work with a master craftsman. You might start by doing a simple task like cleaning, and you'd follow and you'd watch what the expert was doing. And then you get a little bit better and you get a little more trusted, and maybe you get to do something like, you know, help out on one task, and maybe you do a little bit more, and eventually you become an expert. This is also a great model. It was learned by doing. People learned by actually practicing the skill. It would transfer to the actual job. You were learning by doing the actual job. You had a coach. You had an experienced mentor helping you, learning about you, always there with you. And the learning process was very, very personalized. Could not have been more personalized, right? This person understood you, your likes and dislikes, the way that you worked. And apprenticeships weren't just a one-time event. You didn't just take a class and be done with it. You didn't just do one task. They were there. You continued to work with and consult with the master. So this is a great model. What happened to it? It's still around a little bit, but why is this not the way we teach? And really the reason was we needed mass education. At a certain point, lots more people needed to be educated. Lots more people needed to learn things. Experts are expensive. They're in short supply. Sometimes they're doing things like do the actual job. It's hard to find their time. It's expensive. And when we had large numbers of people, you really couldn't teach them that way. So it's incredibly time consuming. That ended up with a model that we typically see today, where you still have somebody teaching in front of a room and a lot of memorization, a lot of testing. We see this a lot in corporate L&D, and we see this in the educational system as well. It made sense because it was inexpensive and it could scale up, right? So really everything about apprenticeships was great except for the scalability. They did not scale up. This is where technology can really, really help us. New technologies give us new ways to interact. So first I'll talk a little bit about the way we interact with technology. And then we'll put this all together. You know, back in the old days, we had radio. You could listen. TV gave us sound. So the things that we would do on television were not the same as on radio, right? It was more like movies. It also had picture. VCRs allowed us to play shift and time shift, right? So you could watch later, you could fast forward, you could watch it somewhere else if you wanted, record a tape and bring it somewhere else. Video games gave us new forms of controllers, computers. We all have seen the mouse and different types of interfaces, smartphones and tablets, and now we're onto VR and AR and other things, which I'll talk about. But each time there are different things that we can do. So now we have virtual reality. Virtual reality is really interesting for putting people in simulated worlds that seem real, that seem realistic. We can get the kind of guidance and feedback that maybe I got from the coach that I had in 5th grade. Augmented reality lets us do different things. Take a look at the world. Here's a Google Map example. You hold up your phone, it tells you where things are. So you might be able to do things that put you in a position to not need as much training as you otherwise would. These are different technologies with different goals and different purposes. So our goal shouldn't necessarily be to take existing learning models and simply move them to this kind of environment, right? Because sometimes we'll see that. Sometimes we'll see, here's a class and now it's in VR. Sometimes that's cool. There are things, but there's so much more you can do with VR. There's so much more you can do with AR. Holograms are another one. 3-dimensional images. We can look at them, we can control them sometimes using gestures. Still an emerging technology, but really getting somewhere that's really, really interesting. I know a company out of Italy called eReal, where they do medical simulations. I've worked with them a little bit. And they do some other things as well. But they've done medical simulations where people diagnose medical conditions and actually do things to basically make use of a three-dimensional simulated person. And that's a great way to learn. Artificial intelligence means so many things these days. We'll talk a little bit about ChatGPT and the things you can generate. A lot for me is about what the experience is. What kind of experiences can we create? How can AI help us create better learning experiences for people? How's it going to work is part of the experience that they have. Other technologies emerging as well, wearable technologies. We've seen things like Alexa, 5G networks are more and more prevalent and things are faster without needing much of an internet connection in at least parts of the world. Foldable screens and bendable screens are coming. I have a foldable phone in front of me right now. It's getting better. Some other headsets, other kinds of things. So where does AI fit into all this and what can we do with it? AI has a history. AI has a long history that's been kind of up and down. One of the earliest known AI things was called an ELIZA. It's by a guy named Joe Weizenbaum. And what he did was he built a little program, you may have read about this, it's way back in 1966, that simulated a therapist. So it was a kind of chatbot-ish program in the early days. It looked like this. So you might have a conversation with this simulated therapist, okay, which he called ELIZA. This is a real dialogue that came from years ago. Okay. ELIZA would ask lots of questions. Is something troubling you? What is the connection? Can you think of an example? So this is one that's a public example. This is one that I got from a public source. The feel of this was very real. People enjoyed it. People felt maybe they got something out of it. I don't know. Some people did, some people didn't. But ELIZA didn't really understand anything, right? ELIZA took keywords and figured out kind of what the right next question was. So it seemed to be doing more than it was. It had its kind of uses, but mostly it was an interesting experiment in, what can you do that feels real, but doesn't have any underlying understanding of what you're doing really? Still very cool for the time, but there's an important point in there, especially in light of what we're doing today. 1970s saw the rise of some intelligent tutoring systems that could help you work through a problem. So some AI systems that were really good at helping people in math, some other things that would, ask you questions as you went along. A step above what something like ELIZA could do, they had a conceptual model typically of what they were trying to teach. And that was really, really interesting and useful. Expert systems were what we would call now something used for performance support, often big in medicine, something that would help people make good decisions. In the early 90s, we started to see training simulations through AI, and that was a lot of my own early work. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of one of those in just a minute, and then today we're seeing intelligent analytics, chatbots, adaptive learning, robots, all sorts of things, and it seems to change on a momentary basis. So one of the questions is what we can do with all of this. But first, I want to show you a little bit of one of the early simulations, which is from 1991. This was a corporate learning simulation that was actually part of my own work back in the early 90s for Boston Chicken, which was a fast food, well, they didn't like to be called fast food. They were a fast food-ish chain in the US. They're now called Boston Market. And this was to train their cashiers how to be good cashiers. So you would think, what kind of training do you need for something like this job? The cashier's job was use a keyboard that looks like this thing on the right. That was their job. And they had goals. Their goal was, in the real job, be fast, be accurate. Okay, be friendly was a tertiary goal, but be fast, be accurate. So this simulation was built around the idea of having a keyboard on their screen that exactly mimicked the keyboard that they would use in real life. And then you had things happen to you. So you had some other things you could ask the customer. You had performance meters evaluating your speed and accuracy all the time. And you had questions that you could ask. And you had a customer staring at you. And a little bit of help at the top to tell you what her order was. So what really happens here is a customer comes up in video, which I won't show you a video. Don't think we have the video from 1991 or it would really look all that good. And she comes up and she orders a half chicken with tortellini salad and fruit salad and these other things. So I'm a cashier. What do I do? So I might ask, now what? So I'll click the now what button. And a little tutoring component comes up and says, well, you need to ring up the customer's order. All right, seems reasonable. I'm a cashier. She just walked up to me with a tray of food. But how do I do that? Look at this, look at this keyboard. What do I do? And the system tells you to click the 1/2 with sides key, which is flashing now, and it flashes it for you. Okay. All right, so I see that key, but why would that be the key? There are, what about the tortellini salad? There's a tortellini salad key. Why don't I use that? And the answer is that's the efficient way to ring this up. So as a cashier, I'm starting to learn what the rules are for what I do and when. Okay, so I go ahead and ring it up. This goes on. This entire thing goes on. Now, as I'm going, the speed and accuracy meters are running. So I'm feeling some time and accuracy pressure. And if I don't do well, my scores will go down. So this was interesting. This is a really long time ago. And this experience was a true learning by doing experience. Guidance, feedback, all the things that we've talked about, right? So I really had to do the job the way that I have to do the real job as much as possible. The performance meters added a game-like feel. It was a game-like feel in an authentic way. I was evaluated on the real things that I'll be evaluated on the job. So I wasn't just collecting points. I was able to say, if I'm good at this game, I'm good at the job, almost for sure, right? Like the job transfer was really, really high. The challenge aspect worked too. People would play this and like think of it as a game and try to just keep going until they got great scores. The guidance and feedback components used AI techniques. So here's where the AI came in that form, okay? So a couple things about the AI elements. It had a chatbot feel to it, right? So, it knew more than Eliza. It didn't know everything, but it did know something. It had a built-in model of, at any stage, what the right answers were, what acceptable but maybe not most efficient answers were, and what the wrong things were. It also understood in the sense that it had data about common mistakes that people would make. So there were certain things that people would have misconceptions about. If you made that kind of mistake, it would be able to explain to you sensibly, like, pretty much, oh, you might think that you would hit the tortellini salad key, but that's not efficient. You should hit the 1/2 with sides key. If you hit something random, it would eventually just say, yeah, that's not the right thing. Here's what you ought to be thinking about. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of data. The best response, alternative good responses, common errors, the text for the now and how and why cases. All of this was included in this system. So this was a specific type of artificial intelligence. There's a specific branch of AI that's a symbolic AI or knowledge representation AI school. And that's actually what I learned in those days, and that's kind of where this came from. And it worked really, really well. It worked well for tasks that we understood, right? We could understand what the things were to do, what the options were. It's different than what you see today with ChatGPT and some other things. It's a very different approach. But for a learning experience standpoint, it was really, really useful, especially in something that we could tightly scope the way that we could. Okay. Also, behind the scenes, you could affect on the accuracy score. So everything that we did, here's a mistake that would cost you, X amount in accuracy. This is a really bad mistake. Maybe you lose more points. So there was kind of a point system. Next steps. Tracking learner performance, identifying strengths and weaknesses, so an adaptive approach. Determining learners' next scenario, next problem or task based on a nuanced view of their past performance. And then trying to incorporate learner preferences more. So we've done a lot of these things over the years in this kind of context, with this and some other similar tasks, some customer service tasks, and some other things. Let's talk about ChatGPT in contrast to this and where it might fit in. ChatGPT has a very different approach. It's called a large language model approach. It's machine learning. So the system I just showed you doesn't learn. It learns what it's been told. It's not going to learn more than that, right? So some person had to figure out, what are the scenarios I want to put in for Boston Chicken? What are the right things to do? What are the wrong things to do? Somebody had to figure that out. Once it was in, the machine knew it and knew when to say what. So everybody who used that system got a really good personalized feeling experience. ChatGPT has a different approach. It's learning a lot of information. It learns all the time. You talk to it, it learns something new. It's really been great for generating things, right? So great with some caveats, right? So if you tell it to, write a story about Boston Chicken in the style of Bob Dylan song. You know, it could do that, and it would probably be hilarious. Even though you would think, what does it possibly know about Boston Chicken, and has it know Bob Dylan style? It's really good at this. Lots of people have had fun doing these things. But there are some caveats, and I'll talk about those in a second. Will it replace Google? As a search engine, it's interesting. It's somewhat analogous to Google in that it's getting things from the internet, though it's doing some more, arguably some more learning. There are lots of accuracy concerns right now, and that's one of the major things, right? So if you're using it and you need to trust it, it's a bit of an issue. I have a colleague who was playing around with it and asked it to build, to write an academic paper about online learning, about a specific online learning topic. And the paper that it produced sounded really good. Definitely on the level of what my students at Columbia would write. It was good. The references were mostly people who worked in the field. Some of them were names that didn't exist and were apparently sort of made up. I don't know if that's really the right term, but they weren't real people. Some of the references were to real people, but to articles that they did not write. So there's a lot of stuff you have to do to really fully make use of something like this and understand what you have. And so it's easy to jump to conclusions. It's really fun for general creativity. Beyond that, hard to tell where we are. So a lot of this is, we need critical thinking skills. People should be thinking about, what do I do with this? How can I make the best use of it? It's a major issue. So I put together a few things about how I see ChatGPT as of now. What's hope and what's hype? So I think now it's already useful to generate text that a person can then perfect. Sometimes it's closer to great than others. I've had a lot of people have really good experiences with it, especially as they've gotten more adept at knowing what questions to ask it and how to refine it to get it to produce, here's a letter I need to write to a lawyer about a particular issue. Let me start with that. Okay? And it gives you a starting point. How many times have you stared at a blank page and wondered, I don't know where to start? This gives you something, and it gives you more than that in some cases. People have said they've had experiences where it's 95% of what they wanted, but not all the time. So you can't just leave it on its own. But there's a lot of hope there. Promises as a useful search engine replacement, right? When I Google something, I should not necessarily expect that what I'm finding is accurate. I'm expecting that what I find is hopefully useful. I need to be critically thinking to vet the sources. Where is this coming from? Is this good information? It learns and improves its responses, even in the context of the conversation with you. So this can get a lot better. But there are still concerns. One thing that maybe I'll call hype, kind of feels like it's a little bit overblown, is, the system's only as good at best as the data that it has. So people jump a little bit to the conclusion that, hey, this thing knows a lot of stuff. Well, it kind of does and it kind of doesn't. It knows the data that it has. And it doesn't always know what that means because it doesn't really have a conceptual model of any of it. It's very good at kind of piecing together things that make sense. So it's more than an ELIZA, but it's not at the level of what the Boston Chicken demo did in terms of realistic, trustworthy interactions. So following on that point, large language models essentially learn without really understanding. There's a little bit of controversy in the field about this, but I think by and large, people are on the side, and I am on the side of, it learns without understanding. It's not an underlying conceptual model. So can this become reliably accurate enough? I think that's an open question. Does it need to combine with other AI approaches? Maybe. I could kind of imagine a world in which the large language model approach worked in a much more tightly scoped area, like you provided it certain content about certain areas and was able to put together enough information about those areas. So it could learn all about cashiering and Boston Chicken. Maybe that would work better. But there's a lot to think about in how we use it. There are definitely uses from the production standpoint, creating content. It's absolutely helpful. It can make your life better, but there are caveats as well. So what can we do? This is the last thing I want to do before I wrap up, is show you a potential future learning experience that brings some of these technologies together. This is a student in his room, and he's learning about ancient Greece. He doesn't look like he's learning about ancient Greece or doing much of anything until he clicks a button and sees a projection on his wall. Okay, so he's in this experience, he gets to interact with a virtual AI coach. And he sees something on his wall. He says, oh, is that the Acropolis? And there's a coach who says, yes, it is. Actually, let me tell you more. Here's what the word Acropolis means. This is the famous Acropolis. So yes, you are correct. The student may ask, well, did the Acropolis always look the same over the years? And the coach has an answer. We don't know much about the architectural appearance. Then Pisistratus built this entry gate. That was interesting. All right, take a look. She shows me. Student might ask who Pisistratus was. She'll tell him a little bit about that. So you're having a dialogue. This is a much more, in an ideal world, this is a realistic dialogue. Student might have comments on the Acropolis being bigger. Later on, the student can go to real-life Greece, have the AI coach available, and have colleagues available. Might have comments with students, discussions with students, all of the same thing. And the AI coach is kind of there to monitor a lot of things and help out. This model also works in training as well. Same student might have a job in retail. Okay. Projects in a training room what a store would look like. He sees a customer there and says, hello, can I help you find anything? In this case, the AI coach is also monitoring gestures and facial expressions. She says, hey, well, make sure you smile and look friendly. Because, this woman does not seem to really be paying a lot of attention to me yet. So he redoes it. All right, he asks again. She's got a little bit, she looks up. She's got a question. Do you have this in a size small? And he says, yep, let me check. And goes on. So that's just a little bit of what that might look like. In the end, the coach summarizes, you did great, but you need more work on your facial expressions. She gives him scores, wording, tone, facial expressions, customer satisfaction. And in this quick example, what's interesting here is that the scores, again, are real things, right? He's performing a real job in a realistic environment and getting rated on the real things, right? He's not getting rated on how many, which one of these is not a principle of customer service. He's getting rated on how well did you do this job in an environment that feels pretty real. And if you're in a projected holographic world, as we imagine you might be, it feels really real. A lot of key elements of these experiences. These are experiential. You're learning in a realistic context. Okay, so again, you're learning by doing, and you get skill transfer to the job. We're using the technology, using the different types of technologies that we have, and using the AI components to create an environment that's going to result in skill transfer. If you can do well in this environment, you're going to be pretty good at working with a real customer, about as close as you can get. Coaching guidance, we've got the AI coach for you. Feedback comes from a coach, can come from peers, could also come from the character. So we didn't see one of those, but there are times you can make the customer unhappy or angry, and you'll get some feedback that way too, like you would in real life. And you get a realistic performance-based assessment and evaluation. In the Greece example, you also get a lot of exploration. You get creativity, you get control in a lot of different ways. So Omar talked before about control a little bit, and we can talk more about that as well. There's the idea that you can choose what you want to do and how you want to do it. But in the work example, you're learning a real task. You're also not just lost. You're assisted and advised. You're not just out there thinking, what do I do? You can explore if you want, but you're assisted and advised. The way my 5th grade teacher was there to help us. We didn't just get stuck, I have no idea how to figure out what goes on in the state of Pennsylvania. If I had no idea, I had someone who would help me. She wouldn't necessarily just say, do this. She'd say, well, have you thought about X? And I might think more about X. The same is true here, and that's where the coach can help. We've talked a lot today already about where humans fit in and how there's so many benefits to having people involved more in the learning process, which I fully believe. But we have, as we saw, a scalability issue, right? We just don't have enough people able to really play the role that we want. So the idea that I'm suggesting here is taking AI and new technologies, and the AI components especially, and using those to create experiences that people are really going to enjoy that work on a large scale. We build this kind of system for one person. It works for everybody if we do it right. The overall experience is immersive and personalized. And I promise that's the last bullet on this slide. The AI elements, realistic interactions, tracking learner performance, and incorporating learner preferences. Couple final points. We can use AI to help create more humanizing experiences, not less humanizing. So much technology feels as if it's there to make your life difficult. It's going to grade you on a test. It's going to make you jump through hoops. This is the kind of technology that's going to help us explore things, learn about ourselves, learn what we want to learn, and enjoy the experience of doing it as much as possible. New technologies to help people create learning experiences that are scalable. And assisting in the content creation process as well, as we saw maybe with ChatGPT. So I'm going to close on one quote. This is an old quote from Isaac Asimov from 1983, where he predicted the educational world of 2019. And he said, education, which must be revolutionized in the world, will be revolutionized by the computer. And everybody will finally be able to learn in their own way, in their own time, at their own speed. And education, and this I think applies to corporate L&D, will become fun because it will bubble up from within and not be forced in from without. And to me, that's a lot of the secret of this, right? It's respectful. It treats you like you have your own expertise. It doesn't ask you to feel like you're sitting in the class memorizing things because you're told to memorize things. It treats you with respect, allows you to pursue your own interests, makes you feel a lot of agency, and gives people the opportunity to do what they want. All right. I would discuss questions and comments. I will be around after this. Please go ahead and photograph this. I have used all of my time, so we're going to go on to the next talk in just a minute. I do have a book out that covers a lot of this, and that's available now on Amazon. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn, anywhere else. Thanks for taking the time with me, and I really appreciate all of you staying around for this. So thank you.